Janusz, here's a dilemma for you. You're the best paid player at probably one of the biggest clubs, if not the biggest club in the world, but you're not playing that often and you want to play at the World Cup. What does Philippe Coutinho do? Does he stay at Barcelona, or does he move perhaps to the Premier League, where we're led to believe there's a fair bit of interest in the former Liverpool player?
Well, as a player, of course, you want to move. I mean, he hasn't been playing. Obviously, we all know that there is a need in Barcelona, and that is a financial one to get rid of players. Coutinho seems to be one of them because he earns a lot of money, and they have to clear some money. They want to register Ferran Torres. They probably want to get some other players in as well. So I think it's all logical and it makes sense, and I can understand for both Philippe Coutinho wanting to move and Barcelona wanting to move him because of the amount of money he earns right now. It's obviously going to be most likely a loan somewhere because I don't see anybody putting up the money that Barcelona would ask for him. But yeah, I mean, it's a massive risk, Mark, for anyone to be wanting Philippe Coutinho, isn't it?
Well, is it a risk reward, or is it just a risk with chance of little reward? I think if you can get him back to his best, then the rewards would come. But you're right, that is a risk. Let's look at some potential landing spots for Philippe Coutinho. And one that I thought was very interesting, Steven Gerrard played with Coutinho. Could Steven Gerrard now manage Coutinho if he was to go to Villa on loan?
Look, I'm all about players given second or third or fourth chances because you see the talent. But you got to ask yourself a question, right? I mean, there was a reason that Steven Gerrard was brought into to Aston Villa. One of the reasons, I'm not saying the main one, but one of the reasons was that defensively there were massive issues, right? For Dean Smith, they were leaking goals for fun. Now, when Steven Gerrard first came in, I think it got a little bit better, but now they shipped 5 goals, I think, in the last a couple of games against Brentford and Chelsea as well. Now, Philippe Coutinho, not necessarily the sort of player that you would think of, but let's think about it even bigger, right? I mean, if I look at Philippe Coutinho, last time he played 90 minutes was in 2020, and that was in October in El Clasico that they lost to Real Madrid. Often injured. You almost have to create a special environment for him because he's not a two-way player. I mean, when I think of Philippe Coutinho, I almost put him in the category of Mesut Ozil or James Rodriguez. They've got talent. They can show it to you once or twice. But in between, it just, it's not enough. It's not enough to bring players like that because I still think of them as liabilities. And look, if I see Philippe Coutinho of old, maybe at Liverpool, which, by the way, there's certain environments that needed to be created, and there were players around him that could, help him out a little bit, Mark, right? And say, listen, go out there, do your best, and we'll do the rest. But this has been such a long time ago that I think it's a massive, massive risk. And quite frankly, I think Aston Villa have the players of that ilk anyway.
That's a really good point because I think he's only started 5 games in the league for Barca. He's come off the bench 7 times. Now, he's still been in the Brazil squad, the last World Cup qualifiers in November. He traveled to South America, didn't play a single minute. So he needs to play. And that's a good point about Villa. The other 2 that we mentioned are Everton and Newcastle. For either of those 2 clubs as a landing spot, taking you back to your previous answer, how long would it take for someone that doesn't play regularly to get back to the Philippe Coutinho that we know for Everton, for Newcastle, for Aston Villa, for whoever?
I almost want to say too long. I mean, this is January. I mean, when you get players like that, and you likely going to need them to play a lot from now on, right? I mean, this is a player that this season has played 12 games, scored 2 goals. This is a player that last season has played 12 games in the league and scored 2 goals as well. Actually, you may say, well, he's not a goal scorer. I mean, he's the creator, right? I mean, when was his last assist? I mean, he has no assists. I think there was a friendly, I looked it up, against River Plate that Barcelona played, and he had an assist. Before that, I mean, you have to go ages for that as well. So I apologize for being negative. I'd like to, I hope that I'm being proved wrong because, I mean, I don't, wish anything bad for any player. And Philippe Coutinho was wonderful at one time. But I just think in January, when you bring in a player like that, that's, it's going to take some time. And with his history of injuries, I just don't see it. Rafa Benitez, I mean, pretty much defensive-minded manager who right now has his issues with Everton. How? Tell me logically how that's going to happen, because logic tells me no.
Let's follow up on that Everton link with Coutinho. He couldn't, could he? We didn't think Benitez would go there, and he did. Not another former Liverpool player, because there's talk that Farhad Moshiri, the owner, wants him, but Rafa Benitez doesn't.
Well, and that just makes sense, because right now there are all kinds of issues. Rafa Benitez has his own issues right now, because everybody tells me that he's safe, but the results tell me otherwise. The position of Everton in the table as well. So, I mean, if you're Rafa Benitez right now, if you're going to pull a trigger, you need warriors. You need somebody that, that's going to be up for the fight right now. And it just, the profile of Coutinho doesn't fit with Rafa Benitez and with Everton.
Finally, it would be remiss of me not to ask you this. Of all the clubs linked, none of them are Liverpool. They wouldn't, would they? They'd have no interest in getting him back.
No, I don't think so. I mean, you can make a case that if there is a manager, Jurgen Klopp would could possibly make him that, but I think he'd be surplus to requirements. I mean, if you play him in the front three, I guess, because you look at Sadio Mane, at least for a few weeks, and Mo Salah being gone in the midfield, certainly not. I think, they have enough to cover that, especially now Curtis Jones is coming back. Harvey Elliott, and, when you talk about the future, I think he'll be back maybe sooner rather than later, although that's going to take some time as well. And of course, there is enough of a rotation in midfield. So, hard to see that, and especially on the money that would require.
Well, Philippe Coutinho will likely have to move to have a decent chance of being in the starting lineup for Brazil at the World Cup. But as Janusz Michallik quite rightly says, there's a lot of risk, and you don't know what kind of reward you'll get.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.